Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie. I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Before I get into today's topic, I just want to drop a quick reminder that I have the next free Akashic Records workshop, which is online. If you want to come and ask me any of your questions about the Akashic Records, you want to come and meet me, have a chat with me, this is the best place to do it. You can register for that over on my website, and I will, of course, put a link in the show notes. Please do remember that if you can't attend the free workshop live, it's completely okay to catch up. You will receive a link which gives you access to the recording after the workshop has taken place live. I understand time zones can be a bit of a problem sometimes. And if you have questions that you want to ask but you're unable to attend live, you can just drop them to me either via the form on my website or drop me an email, and I will, of course, cover that in the live class so that you'll get a response to your question. Second reminder is my next level 2 training is about to start. So we are going straight from level 1 into level 2. For those of you who are feeling the calling to becoming an Akashic Records practitioner. Now, it is very much a calling. You will know if this is you, if you're feeling like you could really help your clients by offering them Akashic Records readings. A lot of the time, people will start out with a different modality and then they'll start to feel called to go even deeper with their clients, get into the past life stuff, the ancestral stuff like past life vows that we're going to be talking about today. So that is starting this month as well. Again, I will put the link in the show notes to that. If you are curious about what happens in that 12 weeks that we spend together, I will also link a previous episode where I go into detail about the course, how it works, and the structure. If you are feeling that calling, you're like, I know this is what I want to do, but you haven't yet done level 1, always remember that you are able to catch up on level 1 via the recordings, which are in the portal, the level 1 portal. In there is everything that you need to be able to undertake your own work in the Akashic Records. So if this is you and you want to get caught up on that level 1 training before you do level, then again, just drop me an email, drop me a message on social media, and we can arrange for you to have access to that portal to get you caught up in time to do the practitioner training. Now that all the reminders are out of the way, let's get into today's topic, which is past life vows. And this topic very much goes hand in hand with previous episodes on soul contracts. Oftentimes there'll be past life vows that are intertwined and interconnected to soul contracts. And also in respect of previous episodes on Akashic Records clearing. I'm going to be talking today about clearing quite a lot. Again, I will link those previous episodes in the show notes. So if you're unfamiliar as to the different terms that I'm using and what they're in relation to, you can go and check those episodes out as well. As I'm sure you can all imagine, past life vows are a huge and fascinating topic within the Akashic Records. I have seen so many different types of past life vows in the Akashic Records in thousands and thousands of readings and clearing sessions that I do with clients. So today is going to be very much a generalized overview. I say that specifically because obviously you may be being affected by a past life vow that I don't cover here today, and I don't want you ever to think that if I haven't mentioned it here today, it's not relevant. Okay? You're a unique individual who will have been through your own journey, and there may be past life vows that you have had that I don't cover here today that are very much impacting you today. And hopefully by understanding how the different types of vows work and how they show up in our in our current lifetime, that will give you a little bit more clarity, even if I don't cover the specific vow that you have experienced. So in very general terms, there tends to be 2 types of past life vows that are going to show up in the Akashic Records, which can then be further split into different categories. And the 2 types are the forever vows and the never vows. I call them the forever vows and the never vows because I think it's very important that we understand in our current lifetime that we need to be very careful when we are using words like forever and never. Okay? And I'll get into why that is and how these show up specifically a little bit later in the episode. But first of all, I want to go into if these vows have been taken in a past lifetime, why are they still affecting us in a current lifetime? And what we can see with the Akashic Records is that all lives are actually happening simultaneously. Now, our human brain doesn't like this, so I understand if there's a little bit of resistance to this concept. But when we get into the fifth dimension and above, which is where the Akashic Records can be found, fifth dimensionally and above, what we start to see is that there is no experience of time. Time is very much an experience of a fourth dimension and below. And as you move through the fourth dimensional level of consciousness, one of the things that you find is that there's much more fluidity with time. And I've covered this in a different episode, so I won't go into it here today. But when we connect to the Akasha, or you may call it the Akashic field, or you may even call it the quantum field, what we see is that all of those lives are happening simultaneously. And what happens through each incarnation is that our consciousness is projected into a specific time period and a specific lifetime. Whilst we here on the physical plane experience time chronologically, and we have these things called past lives, from a fifth dimensional and above perspective, they are all happening now because it's all to do with the projection of consciousness into a specific lifetime. I hope that makes sense. Happens when we take these vows, whether they are forever vows or never vows, is there is an energetic reverberation on our light grid, on all 7 energy bodies, and on the various different dimensional planes. Every action, every thought, every emotion has a counterpart across multiple dimensions. Okay? And oftentimes we forget this. So we're going about our everyday life in this physical reality, and we can't see necessarily the impact of our thoughts, our actions, our words in these different planes of reality. But there absolutely is an impact. What happens in the instance of past life vows is that the vow taken has a reverberation effect, and that reverberation effect is carried forward in every lifetime until such time as the vow is released consciously by the individual. This energetic stagnation that is caused by these past life vows is something that we can feel, but not necessarily have a conscious understanding as to what it is that is going on. This is why this conversation is important, and it's important for you to start thinking about, could there be a past life vow that I have taken? Those of you who are clairsentient or you consider yourself an empath, you're going to be interacting with all of these different reverberations all of the time. So when you are out and about in the world and you are interacting with people, you're picking up on the reverberation caused by the thoughts, the actions, the words, the emotions of the individuals around you. And this is why for clairsentience, it's very important to be able to understand how energetics work across multiple dimensions, so across different planes, so that they can learn how to navigate and learn that this isn't a hindrance. This is actually a superpower that you have to be able to tune into all of this information that doesn't necessarily show up in the physical plane in an obvious way. Of course, because of the energetic stagnation that these past life vows cause, there is a knock-on effect on the physical plane, but we might not necessarily consciously make the connection between what is going on in the physical plane, whether that's what's going on in our external reality or what's coming up for us in our thoughts, in our emotional body. We might not make the connection between that and a specific past life vow, but that doesn't mean that that connection isn't there. The good news is, of course, because by utilizing the Akashic Records, we're going into that Akashic field, into the fifth dimension and above. We're also able to release the energetic stagnation that has arisen from those past life vows, and they will impact the light grid, not only for the current lifetime, but all other lifetimes. So this is deep work that you can do in the Akashic Records, but it's extremely beneficial not only for your current incarnation, but any other previous incarnation and any other future incarnation that you're going to have. Now that we understand a little bit about how these past life vows can affect us from a technical, energetic perspective, let's get into a bit more of the practical side of things in respect of what types of vows do people commonly have? How do they affect us in this lifetime? And then what you need to do to be able to start working to release these. The first vow that I want to cover is undoubtedly one of the most common, especially among spiritual people, and it's the vow of poverty. Okay? This is one of those never vows. So it would look like a vow that said, I will never have abundance. I will never have access to money. And this comes up a lot with spiritual people because what you can see when you look at spiritual people's past lives is they tend to have had a lifetime at some point where there has been a vow of renunciation. So renunciation covers many different things, but one of the things it does cover is money and having access to money. In that lifetime where you have had a life of renunciation, whether you have gone off to be a monk or a nun, or you've just dedicated yourself to a specific teaching and you've had to go through the vow of renunciation, this is where this vow of poverty will come in. Other ways that the vow of poverty will show up is if there has been a misuse of financial abundance in a previous lifetime. So, for example, if you have had a lifetime where you've been a very wealthy ruler and you have misused that abundance, you have not allocated resources in a way that is fair to your subjects, and you have, maybe gone on to be extremely greedy, then oftentimes at some point in that lifetime, maybe when everything has come crashing down, you make a vow of never having money so that you can't misuse and abuse it. So this vow of poverty is a big one that can come up, that can show up in many different ways. And of course, when you're now in a lifetime where a vow of renunciation is not relevant and you're living as a householder, you have financial desires and ways that you want to experience abundance, this can be very problematic in respect of holding you back through the energetic stagnation caused by this. The second vow is a vow of attachment. And there's lots of different types of vows of attachment, but the second one I want to cover is the I will love you forever. This is one of those forever vows. And this is a really interesting one, again, because it's so common. We will vow to love somebody for eternity or for all of these different lifetimes. And then obviously when we come into a new incarnation, we forget that we have made that vow. But when that soul who we were with in a previous incarnation comes back around, we have this energetic activation that takes place not only of the soul contract that we have with this individual, not only in respect of any karma that we have with this individual, but also in respect of any past life vows. So this can be very confusing when we have somebody come into our life and they have a massive impact on us. And it's very much that we need to dig into, okay, what's actually going on here? What's the nature of the soul contract? Is there any karma that needs to be worked through? What's the lesson of this contract? And then are there any past life vows that need to be released? And this, of course, is all work that you can do in your own Akashic records or with a practitioner. With this forever vow, there can also be a never vow as well, which is I will never love anybody else. And then what can happen in this lifetime, you can find it very difficult to open yourself up to receiving love and being in love in a romantic relationship with another individual if there's a never aspect to this vow as well. The third vow I want to look at is another one of those renunciation vows, and it's a vow of chastity. And sexual energy and that creative life force is a whole another podcast episode, probably a podcast series in itself. But what we need to understand from a past life vow perspective is if this vow has been taken, it can be very difficult in this lifetime to then tune into that sexual energy, that creative life force that you have within you, which can, of course, have a knock-on effect to problems with receiving or giving pleasure, problems with pleasure in any form, problems of receiving in any form. Doesn't have to be connected to any sexual encounters. It can just be a problem with creative energy, problem with tuning into that, and problems with receiving. And this is a big one, again, that comes up a lot in the spiritual community. Vow number 4 is a vow to a deity or a being. So it's another one of those forever vows, another type of attachment vow. And this can be problematic for a number of reasons. So first of all, you may have knowingly made a vow of attachment to a deity or a being who is part of the devolutionary stream or who is no longer part of the evolutionary stream. Maybe they were part of the evolutionary stream at the time that you made the vow and you were able to expand and evolve as a soul through your connection to that deity or being. But that might not be the case now in this incarnation. We have to understand that souls evolve lifetime after lifetime, and at different times you're going to be working with different higher dimensional energies. It's not that necessarily you've connected to a deity or a being that is just purely of the devolutionary stream, although that does definitely happen. It can be that it's just not correct now in time. And understanding the soul's evolutionary journey as an aspect of correctness in time is very important. So if you have made this vow with this deity or being and it's no longer relevant, it can hinder your spiritual development and it can hinder your ability to connect to other higher dimensional energies and beings that are here to work with you. But if you've vowed to only work with a specific being or energy, until that vow is released, you're not going to be able to have that good, evolutionary, strong connection to that higher consciousness. The fifth vow is a vow to not use your intuition, to not use any gifts, abilities, and skills that you have had. This goes, of course, hand in hand with witch woundings. Again, I will link an episode that I have done previously deep diving into witch wounding. But this vow tends to show up in a myriad of different ways when people, and specifically with women, there is this vow to shut everything down to keep themselves or their family members safe. A lot of the time, making this vow didn't actually achieve anything because the individual was still persecuted or put to death. But it is a common vow that when being persecuted or being threatened, that people would make this vow to try and keep themselves and their families safe. And of course, how this affects you in the current lifetime is knowing that there are these underlying gifts and skills and intuitive abilities, but not being able to tap into them, regardless of how many different methods, practices, and things that you have undertaken. If you're listening to this episode and this is causing a resonance and you're feeling into this and it's a case of, okay, I definitely have some of these past life vows going on. I definitely think that this is me. Then I would highly recommend that you either come to learn level 1, which is learning how to get information and also how to undertake healing and clearing in the Akashic Records so that you can explore this for yourself, or getting in touch with a practitioner like myself in respect of having a clearing so that you're able to not only understand what's going on, but also release the energetic stagnation around the past life vow. I have to say here that we must remember that the Akashic Records are not a magic wand. It is not a case that you can come if you have a, for example, past life vow of poverty, and then you have one clearing, and I wave my Akashic Records magic wand, and all of a sudden that vow of poverty is gone, and you are completely in alignment to more abundance than you have ever known. It doesn't work like that. Yes, we can absolutely release the past life vow in respect of the vow of poverty. That can be done in an Akashic Records clearing. But oftentimes, because of the vow of poverty and how that has impacted us and other factors in our current lifetime, for something like abundance, there has to be a multi-layered approach. So what I mean by this is you may have received certain programs and conditioning from your parents, from the culture that you were born into, from society as a whole in respect of your relationship to money and abundance in all forms. And you also need to work on the level of deprogramming and deconditioning. Similarly, you may have certain emotional responses to money and abundance in all forms. You may have a dysregulated nervous system because of what you've been through throughout your lifetime. And because of that dysregulated nervous system, you may not feel safe in receiving. So, what I'm trying to get across here is that I don't want anyone to think that this is just a one size fits all, or that there is this magic wand and we can just, change your life immediately. But all of those different areas that I've just talked about, understanding the programming conditioning, the emotional resistance, all of that can be understood through your Akashic Records. Oftentimes, when we identify a past life vow through the Akashic Records, we can release the energetic stagnation of that, but we also need to look at, okay, what else needs to be done? So what limiting beliefs do I need to let go of? What programming and conditioning do I have in respect of this particular issue? And then how can I work to release it? We've always got to remember that as multidimensional beings, we also have to look at these issues multidimensionally. I hope you found this episode interesting. I hope that it's given you some food for thought. And I understand that it is a very generic conversation in respect of kind of the 5 most common past life vows that come up. But hopefully it's just given you an understanding as to what can happen, how it can affect you, and then obviously given you some hope and some inspiration in the fact that you don't have to stay stagnated. I look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode.